All right, we are back on MorningLine, and the sheriff and I both talking about our affinity for Taco Bell. Carla over there loves it. She can't help herself when there's a cravings meal, you know? I mean, that's just it, right? Where'd she go? Oh, she's over there. You're gonna have to try the pizza.
I'm not a huge Taco Bell person. I was just going on with y'all.
I know. Well, my son works at Taco Bell, helped pay his college, and he got the Taco Bell scholarship because he made good tacos. Anyway,
that's great.
We're back with Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall. Never know what we might talk about, but we have Beverly. Let's see what she wants to talk about. Good morning, Beverly.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind, ma'am?
Oh, good morning, Sheriff. How are you?
Hey, Beverly, I hope you want to talk about something other than tacos. Nick took us off track.
I'm not a taco person, so I'm not.
All right.
The reason for my call, I have a relative that is in the Davidson County Jail.
Yes, ma'am.
And from what I understand, over the weekend, there were several drug overdoses. Is there anything being done to keep the drugs from getting into the jail?
Wow, God.
I've just done a story on that because we talked about it and you acknowledged it. If you want to touch bases, what did I do the story 2 weeks ago about the steps you've had to take to stem the flow? And it's not just you, it's every jail in the state.
Beverly, I'll tell you what, I mean, I've been here a long time, and you know, drugs being introduced into jails and prisons is not new. It will always be there, unfortunately. I wish I could tell you that it's not, you know, it's a little bit staff-oriented. I could talk about that, but people don't think about this.
You mean staff smuggling it in? Yeah,
and don't forget, staff range today differently than it did 25 years ago. You have contract food companies, you have other people who enter. Now, that's not, I'm not blaming all of them. We have our own staff who screw up, and I will tell you, I'll prosecute them. We do it right now if we catch you. Work very hard to try to make sure that that's not the main culprit. It will always be the temptation to do that. But Beverly, here's the thing that worries me. The potency of what you're able to get into a facility, you know, used to, if we had an overdosed case, and I'm talking about this, you know, someone who was overdosing in a jail, that may be one time a year. We have 3 a night sometimes coming into the booking room, people, whether they ingest stuff, whether they get it into the system, and I could be very graphic about it. I will just say it's not uncommon for people to swallow something and then pull it back up or hide things in body parts that it's hard to detect when you come into the booking room. But what's so dangerous is, and what you brought up, is that the potency of a thing called fentanyl in anything it gets into is near death. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It is so strong. And so, you know, we obviously use Narcan. That is a way to revive people. It's amazing to watch people's lives be on the edge and then bring them back, you know, multiple times. And I'm not saying that same person, but as you mentioned, maybe over the weekend, I was talking to one of our jail administrators yesterday or the day before, I forget exactly, and he was talking about a situation where once a very minute amount of fentanyl gets into a housing unit in any form, it can be spread out. In this particular day that he was talking about, there were 3 different people who had ingested or used fentanyl, and all were overdosing at the same time. We almost lost one of them because we were responding to 2 in the same housing unit, 2 in the same bunk area, and thought that was the problem. And down the wall here, there's another room where another young man was overdosing. And so the good news is that we've been very fortunate so far not to have lost anybody. And we are, I could give you hundreds of things that we're doing to try to stop it, including changing policies. We're bringing in drug dogs more than we used to ever do that. We have a SORT team that goes in, and we do, I like to call it flushing. What that means is if there's any drugs in housing environments, we're doing these thorough searches. What happens is the inmates who have drugs oftentimes will flush them, afraid they're going to get caught and charged. So in a way, we're trying to find it. We're also trying to flush it. And that's just happening at their own.
Try to get them to flush it because they know you're coming?
Yeah, the reality is we're trying to find it. But
they know you're coming, so that gets rid of it.
And so that we have a win-win in some cases. The point is, I call it a show of force. We're going after drugs and people and policies to try to help us. You're fighting some weird, Nick did a story about a thing called Suboxone, where you're basically able to liquefy drugs. And so we now no longer allow magazines and books coming in.
Pretty much gone paperless.
Right. So
because they would put it on the paper paper and blot it and let them know what, just eat this word on a page and you will get high.
To just lick this or soak this.
And there's no way to catch that when it comes in. Right.
So, and again, I wouldn't want you to tell me this, Beverly. It's not all outsiders. It's not all magazines. We also have employees who the temptation obviously gets to them. There's a lot of money involved in that
Meaning
situation.
someone on the outside says, I want to get this to this inmate. If you take it, I will pay you such and such, and there's the temptation.
Yes, and here's what it used to be. I mean, you used to need an amount of cocaine. You used to need an amount of pills. You needed an amount of marijuana or whatever. The amount of it is substantial to try to get in, a handful or whatever. I mean, you can't even identify a speck of fentanyl that will kill you.
That's scary.
So just think how hard that is to, I mean, that could be in your pants pocket. As an employee, we couldn't find it if we had to because it's not a substantial amount. So it is always going to be a challenge. Our goal is, obviously, we do not want to lose anyone in this process. We will terminate and prosecute any employee or a contract person, and we're working very hard to adjust our policies to make sure that we're not, in our old ways, allowing it to come through in a very free-flowing way. But I was on the phone with Louisville, Kentucky, a very similar city, a very similar size system. They actually called and wanted to talk to us, and their question was, how many inmate deaths have you had since January? And I said, well, we've had none, and a lot of that's luck and a lot of that's hard work. They've had 7.
Yeah.
And so if you look around this town tonight, there will be overdoses and drug use and death. And the point I'm making is we run a small city, and if you think about it, the population we're dealing with is much more higher risk for having such things. And so we're fighting it at a far greater level percentage-wise than you are in a community. And I'm talking about overdose, accidental overdose, basically. And when a police arrest someone, a lot of times the drugs they have on them, they're trying to stuff or hide or ingest so they can keep it and go forward. And they can swallow a balloon of it, pull it back up. There's a lot of different things that goes on, and we're fighting all sorts of obstacles. But just remember, overdose in this county tonight is real. It's happening on drugs. I mean, I have a dear friend of mine, his 26-year-old daughter was taking ecstasy, I think, basically a feel-good drug. Wasn't trying to harm herself, died instantly because it was laced with fentanyl.
Yeah,
it's just a very dangerous world. I mean, there's fentanyl laced in Advil right now. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do, and so we are challenged by it. Beverly brings it up, and I have nothing but concern over the challenges that we're facing on overdoses.
Take a break on that note. It is like playing Russian roulette if you're doing any of those drugs. And when we come back, more of our conversation with the sheriff right after this.